Brilliant. So welcome everyone to our Q&A stream. We are trying to stream semi-regularly, and this is a format that people have liked in the past. Astara did it in the form of Ask Astara videos. We're doing it a little less extravagantly than her because no one could ever hope to top the Ask Astara videos. So we've got some questions that you've all submitted. If you have not heard my voice before, I'm Aonia, and I'm one of the co-producers of Lusternia, and I'm here with Orael, who is our other wonderful producer. And so we're going to answer some questions for you today. We've had quite a few submitted. I'm afraid we're not going to get through all of them, but we will do our best. We're hoping to run for about an hour, so maybe we'll have a chance for some questions from the chat. But we will see how we go. So our first question, we've sort of answered already, because the first question is from Eze, and the first question is, how do you pronounce Orael and Aonia? Like that. Orael, how do you pronounce Orael and Aonia?
Well, I never actually pronounce anything right, so I'll just go with what you say. So, everything that I have in my head's all different than how other people say it. So
Yeah, we also answer to Oreo and vowels, so that's the alternative pronunciation if you prefer a different one. Okay, so we've grouped our questions into two main categories, although one of them is everything else. So our first category is sort of our roadmap for 2020, our immediate plans, and things related to those projects. So we're gonna go through those together and answer all of the questions related to that. So we first of all had a very general question from Israel and I'm going to pronounce all of your names so you can tell me if I'm pronouncing your own names wrong. And Israel has asked us what is on the roadmap for 2020 and beyond. So Orael, do you want to start off by talking about what you're doing right now?
yeah, I can start. So right now my big priority is Endgame Part 2, which is involved with the ability to purchase levels, to get the perk system in place, the passive generation of essence, all that stuff that comes along with it. Hopefully, it should be pretty quick. I'm pretty far into it already, so it shouldn't be too much longer. But sometimes things pop up and surprise me. So I don't know exactly how much longer it is, but that's the next thing to finish off. Once we get that released, what I do want to do is open up reports again for everybody. Since it's been about 6 months since the last time, so you guys can start getting your reports ready to go. We'll get that done, and then yeah, I mean, I can stop there for now.
Yeah, so that actually also answers a question from Misericord, who wanted to know when the next round of envoys will reports will be open. So yeah, it will be after that. We don't know exactly when. Concurrent to that, we also have a couple of things going on. As you can imagine, Arail and I are often working on separate projects concurrent to each other. So one of the big things that I'm looking after at the moment is Ascension. Obviously, we've had the ongoing events that are leading up to Ascension. Thank you, everyone who's gotten involved in those and for your wonderful feedback. Watch out for the last weekend of this month. I understand things, there might be some dragons, I don't know. As in terms of the Ascension event itself, so Ixion has asked if you can get a general idea of when Ascension's going to be. I can tell you that the seal events for Ascension will be through June, and the final trial will be in July. We will be announcing all of the dates for those on the 1st of May. The events will be in a slightly different order this year. They will still all be on weekends. It will be the normal format of generally we've got 2 events a weekend. But what we've done is ordered them so that it's a bit better for us, basically. We have the events in an order where we're not overwhelmed. So you might find them in a slightly different alignment to what you'd expect, but we'll release all of that for you on the 1st of May. In addition to Ascension, we've also had some questions. We had quite a few questions from people about late game bashing, end game PvE content. We've had various different versions of this question, especially related to Astral being particularly strained right now because there's lots of people in there bashing because you all want essence for your new powers. The other thing we're working on, and the thing that I am starting work on soon, and that Orael will be also working on once the second phase of the demigod changes is in, is what we are calling Endzone. We're not going to reveal everything to you about Endzone right now. I will say we're incredibly excited about it. It's going to be a very, very different way of bashing. We want it to be genuinely challenging. You've asked for a long time for something that can really challenge people who are into PvE, and will be a bit more dynamic and interesting. It will completely turn everything you think you know about bashing in Lusternia on its head. And that is something we're very excited to bring to you. I don't have a lead time on it. Yes, it's turn-based hunting. So I can't tell you how long it's going to take. We have been slightly delayed on starting it, whilst fortunately, by the nature of all of us being remote, COVID-19 hasn't had a huge effect on us. It does affect all of us individually, and unfortunately, where I'd hoped that we were going to start that project a few weeks ago, we are a little bit behind, but we're now in a position where we can get picking up on that and get going with building what's going to be a really exciting area. So yes, we are absolutely looking into new options for endgame hunting, and that's something we're very excited about. I don't know if you wanted to say anything else about that, Orael.
No, I think you covered it. I think the exciting thing is that it's going to take everything you think you know about bashing and turn it on its head. It's going to require a lot more choices and reactions and fun stuff, so it should be good.
And I will say that it's we are aiming in this instance to release one area, but we're designing it so that it's something we can build more versions of in the future, both in terms of a lore capacity as to what the area is and also in a function capacity. So it's absolutely something that we think we can do more with in the future. For example, doing versions where you are required to go through with a certain number of people, or different challenge versions,
or solo challenges, groups, everything, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. But in this instance, it's just the one. So we'll have more news on that for you in the future. What were the other things we had here? Okay, so I did want to, so in terms of looking at our roadmap as a whole, we do have some stuff that we, I was going to say secret things, but it's more background things that aren't relevant for talking about. We have a bunch of things that we need Orael to do, basically, that don't necessarily have an impact upon you directly, that are sort of background things that help our volunteers out or help us, sort of underlying stuff to help us work on other things. So we have got that as well, and I mentioned that. I realise that's a weird thing to mention, but mostly so that you can bear in mind that concurrent to these major projects, we have got other smaller things going on as well. And whilst we're really lucky that we've got Aonia around helping out still, there's a lot that we need to get done, basically, and we're very keen to ensure that we don't try and take on too much at once. There's loads of things that you want that we'd really like to give you, but we think it's most important that what we give you is good and that it's completely finished, and that we give it enough time to settle once it's released, so we've gotten any bugs out of it, any changes we need to make balance wise, anything like that. We don't want to rush, basically. So where things take a bit more time, like Orael was saying earlier, sometimes we go to do something and something crops up and suddenly it takes a lot longer than we'd expected. That sort of thing. One of the other background things that I actually do, and this is actually the thing that is my primary focus outside of events and lore work, I've been working really hard to make sure that our volunteers have the capacity to do really cool things. So you'll be aware that one of the things our volunteers do is help us with administrative stuff behind the scenes, but we've been working hard to make sure that they're not overworked, that they can focus on the things they want to, that their workloads are manageable, because we believe that that's going to make them be able to stay around longer, have a lot more fun, bring you guys a lot more fun as well, be able to focus more on things like patron work and stuff like that. So that actually occupies the vast majority of my time, is looking after them, because the only, they're amazing, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and we want to make sure that they have the time and desire to do fun stuff for you too, because they love doing it. So we want to make sure that they're not drowned in other stuff, so they can focus on what they enjoy too.
Exactly, and we're hoping that means you get to see more of them as their god roles, and have more fun interactions with NPCs and things like that. But they can't give you that if they've been overloaded with work. So we think that's a really important thing. That's a really high priority for us as a team. The only thing I missed in there that's related to all of that, we have got a follow-up question. This new hunting area will be attached to the main game, but instancing is something we've considered and talked about. That's about as much of an answer as I can give you in terms of whether we're using instancing or not. It's something we've looked at. And actually, this last question we've got in this category is also from you, Nelras. So Nelras has asked, what would be an appropriate in-character explanation for the range of demigod powers opening up to everyone? And will the next phase of the demigod overhaul be tied to an event, or will it just be released as a mechanics changed? So that's two questions. So the first question, in terms of role-playing your demigod powers, every demigod, whether they're a demigod or an ascendant of any kind, has an attachment to the Demotheus realms. I think it makes absolute sense to roleplay that you have an affinity to a Domoth. If, for example, you picked up a power from the Harmony Domoth, and you might want to roleplay that you have a stronger affinity to that one. Really, you can pick it, because the Domoths are as fundamental a part of demi-divinity as a whole. They're not just a thing for ascendants, otherwise, demigods wouldn't be able to challenge and hold Domoths and things like that. So I think there's a really strong link there that you can play on in terms of roleplay. And in terms of events related to the demigod overhaul, so events take a huge amount of time and preparation. We likely won't have an event for phase 2. We didn't have one for phase 1 because we actually had 6 weekend-long events in a row over a period of 6 weeks. We are partially still recovering from that. A load of those were player organised, that there was a lot of admin support for. But basically, yeah, we'd love to do millions of events, but we can't realistically. So for these things, no, there won't be any event attached to them. Orael, we have one more follow-up on Endzone, which is how many people will the area be able to handle?
Oh, well, I don't know. We'll have to figure it out.
Yeah,
once we start diving into it, we'll kind of get a good group feel, and this first one we'll probably try to make it so it can handle any size group, right? So
yeah, and I think our idea is
future ones will kind of gear them towards group sizes and individuals, but this first one is like just to get our bearings on everything, and we'll see. We'll just make it so if you've got 30 people, good. If you got 10 people, it'll work out. That's probably the goal for the first one.
Awesome. So obviously that's our immediate roadmap. We do have what we call a star map, which is things going further than that. Our aim is basically, once we get the next round of envoy reports open, we're going to start seriously looking at what our next big roadmap project is going to be. And by our project, I really mean what Orael's next big project is going to be. So we'll look at that then, and we will try and keep you guys in the loop as to what we're doing. We just want to make sure that, we, as I said earlier, we get one thing really sorted before we start pushing too far ahead.
Yeah.
So, well then, that's our first group of questions. We'll now move on to what can best be described as all of the other questions.
Yeah.
So, do you want to? Well, actually,
Yeah,
we've alternated them, so you get to alternate between who you're listening to. So I'll leave you to it, Orael. The first question is yours.
Okay. So this question is from Zenthos, and he's talked about. We previously said alliance mechanics were on the table after the demi rework. Is this still the case? And if there are there details of how it will work in regards to the alliance situation? The alliance mechanics that we talked about were on our star map. They were always kind of one of those distant things that we would consider looking at some point in time. It wasn't ever an immediate like, oh, we got to do this right away. So it's definitely still on that star map. Because alliance mechanics can help, like these kind of situations where it's 4v2 or whatever, can kind of help mediate stuff and alleviate some of the pressure and whatnot. There's always a risk that alliance mechanics just fundamentally stick the alliances into two different factions permanently. But on the other hand, it could make it really flexible and really fun on the other side, where you could have, Gadagooch declare that they're helping Glomdoring capture a village or helping Magnagora capture a village now or something like that. So there's definitely stuff we've talked about, but there's nothing concrete as to what the details would be. But the goal would be just something that would, make the game feel less empty, help people, with the group stuff, I guess, is the best way to say it. I don't know. I hope that answers the question. So
I think the important thing for us is that it adds something. That
it's got to add something that helps, right? It's got to be something that we feel is going to be a valuable contribution that allows you guys to have more power and more flexibility to do stuff within the game. So
cool. Yeah. So the question I've got is a bit related actually, and this question is from Malagorn, so his question was a lot longer, but it's generally how do we as the administration feel about the current alliance, which is set up as a 4 versus 2 in terms of org numbers. So first of all, we know from a PvP perspective, this sucks, right? Realistically, unless those two orgs have the same number of people, and not just the same number of people, but the same number of, people interested in PvP, as those 4 orgs, unless you've got that balance, then it's going to be imbalanced and it's going to be unpleasant for the people who are the minority. And we are very aware of that. We really believe that Lusternia is a player-driven game, and this is especially in terms of the political environment in Lusternia. We think that the power to change things is yours, and to an extent, the responsibility to change things is yours. And that's a power that we don't want to impinge on unless it's absolutely necessary. Right now, we're really hopeful that things will change in character for you, and that we won't need to do that. The one thing I would add is a reminder that there is a concept of positive metagaming. So we think of metagaming as awful, right? We think of metagaming as person one logged into their alternative character to use all the information they gathered on that sort of thing. Where you're abusing the knowledge that you've gained out of character. But technically, you're metagaming if you know someone's having a bad time out of character, so you don't bother them about those guild tasks they still haven't completed. That's technically metagaming. Like, there's a way to use your knowledge for the positive benefit of people rather than, to abuse that knowledge. To that end, it isn't inherently bad to decide to change your alliance because you know the game isn't fun for a bunch of people or the PvP isn't as good. Obviously, in character, you'd be like, no, most characters would be like, oh, no, it's great, it's peaceful, we're getting everything. But you as our character might be like, no, I'd like some people to fight. I'd like a more interesting fight. And if that's your reason on an out character level for changing an alliance, that's absolutely fine. As long as you roleplay it out in character, you have an in-character explanation for everything at the end, and it's a positive use, not an abuse. Yes, exactly. You use those powers for good, and think about the fact that this is a game. We're all here to have fun, and that I think is our overall stance in terms of that. So I hope that answers your question. I know that was a bit long. And Orael, you've got another slightly related question.
Yeah, there was a question about revolts and flare timings. In regards to that, right? And I think the question, I don't have it pulled up exactly right here, but the question said something like 95%, 98% of all revolts and flares are falling within a certain time period, and they weren't very random. So I put together a bit of stats on it. I did notice that somebody else, I think it was Callie, put together like the stats per hour for the last 700 some revolts and flares, and it really just backs up what I saw. I just did the last 2 years because that's what the question was, and it if you break it down by like a 4-hour period for revolts and flares, from like 12 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 12, etc. Like it averages out pretty well. We're talking, for revolts, we're having an average of 17 revolts that happened each 4-hour period in the past 2 years for the total. And same for the flares. The flares is actually even better, where it's like 11 flares from 12 to 4, 12 flares to 4 to 8, 12 flares 8 to 12. So the data doesn't back up that it's all happening at one certain time frame that helps one org or another, because they can plan it out better. It's actually pretty random, and it's actually working. Now, I did notice, and the caveat to this is that I did notice when I was putting this information together that sometimes there will be a week or two or like 3 revolts in a row that all happen at the exact same hour, like 3 weeks in a row. So 3 weeks in a row, it'll happen, from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then it will go back to being more random. So sometimes it may seem like it is, because like you'll have short little stints where it's all like, happens at noon for 2 or 3 revolts in a row or something like that. But for the most part, it's definitely random enough that we're not really worried about it, and there's nothing for us to do to change it at this point. So
yeah, I mean, we have changed some timings in the past. We did tweak. So we had a problem where wild nodes. So wild nodes operates in a different way, and wild nodes was basically always happening right at the end of that weave. And that was happening because it was based on the number of players online, and it was looking for a certain number, and it was never hitting that, so it was firing at the last possible moment. And we dropped that threshold, and since then it's definitely seemed that wild nodes have been a lot more random, or not random because they're not meant to be random, but a lot more varied in when they are firing.
On that Sunday.
Yeah. So. Okay, so now for something completely different. So we had a question from Jaspet. So apparently there are 2 baby adders in Oleanvir that spawn dead with no poisons. So I think the reason they spawn dead is related to the quest. But there are a load of baby adders in that area that don't have any anatine in them. That is a bug. I will look at that in the next few days for you. But I've also so we addressed anatine was scarce for a while because it's locked behind a quest, which is not ideal. No herbalist has to go and quest before they can harvest some. I was going to say earwort. That's a terrible example, but you get the idea. Yeah. So the problem is they don't respawn because it's locked behind a quest. The numbers are off. So I'm going to also look in the next few days at the numbers that are spawning. Whilst anatine isn't, I understand, as vital to PvP as it used to be, it's still necessary, and the quest is a problem and there's not that many. So likely my fix will be what Ixion has just suggested, which is that I will just throw some adders in there. But I'm going to look at it and I'll look at that quest properly whilst I'm there, and hopefully I should be able to do that within the next few days, the next week. So yes, it is a bug partially, and it is also just a general problem. So I will have a look at that for you.
There you go. So then moving on to the next question, and this one's probably gonna be a little dramatic. But the question is about commodities, and there's been some talk about how they're scarce and people are missing out on commodities. To the point where people are saying noobs are leaving, new players are leaving because they can't get the commodities that they need. And I was saying that there isn't really a scarcity of commodities, and the reason I'm saying that is because the numbers we have don't really reflect that. So if I take a look just for a guessing game, kind of fun. If I told you right now, looking at things, we have this commodity. There is roughly 200,000 of them sitting in 6 org stock rooms. And additionally, there's another 75,000 sitting in player shops, and another 231,000 sitting in the rifts of players who have logged in the last 2 weeks. What comm do you think that would be? So there's roughly 400,000 to 500,000 in this common game right now. Commodities, not herbs. Coal, gems. Gems are abundant. Steel. Any other guesses? Is that pretty much it?
My guess is salt.
Salt. Salts aren't comms either, yo. Gems were big. Silk, cloth. Wood.
There's a couple of guesses for wood there.
Yeah. Now the answer is eggs. The answer is eggs, and eggs happen to be the least popular comm in the game, or commodity. Everything else is much, much more abundant than them. So when we sit here and say that, hey, like there's tons of comms in the game, like somebody said steel. Right now there's 841,000 steel between all 6 orgs in the reserves. Platinum, there's over 1 million. Wood is 500,000 wood. Silk, 832,000, and that's just in org stock shops. So between the orgs, I mean, so you guys are saying that it's scarce, but to us, it looks like it's really being scarce because the players are just holding it back. And maybe it's because the trade ministers aren't releasing it fast enough, or it's too cheap, so people are buying it out a whole bunch, or whatever it is. But there's definitely enough comms in the game to cover everybody. I mean, if we look at player rifts for people who've logged in the last 2 weeks, there's over 200,000 for pretty much every single comm just sitting in player rifts, and that's players who logged in 2 weeks. So I will say that between all the orgs, it looks like Halifax is probably the least stocked with orgs. They're the ones most likely to run out. They have less than 100,000 of everything. So they're pretty low. I think Celeste is probably the second worst off at this point. So that's why when you guys say, when we're hearing that it's scarce and we're telling you it's not, that's why. So the outflow overpowers the income. Well, I mean, you can raise the prices in your shops to help slow the outcome, but when you're sitting on over 100,000 of something, it's hard to say that's the issue. So anyway, that's kind of where we're coming from when we say that stocks aren't really, or commodities aren't really scarce, that there's quite a few of them in the game available. I mean, we can look at the village things too, and there's plenty of stuff in the villages as well. I mean, most things, especially for the newbies who need stuff, like they're not they're not looking for thousands of columns. They're looking for maybe hundreds, and it's definitely readily available pretty much everywhere. So.
Okay, so the next question is from Misericord, which is about the quest system and adding quests to the quest system. So if you're not familiar, quests on, especially older quests, are not all in our modern quest system, and I use the word modern. It's existed since before I joined the Havens, so it's modern in a relative sense. And basically, Misericord is asking if there's anything that all of you can do to help us with getting quests into the quest system. So basically, what it entails for us is that we have to go back through the entire quest and make sure that you receive the quest at different points, especially because you can pick quests up when they're midway through. So we need to make sure that it's not just you get the quest added to you at the start, but it's multiple points through it. We make sure at that point, because it's effectively what we're doing is auditing the quest. So at that point, we also make sure that the rewards are good and the quest as a whole, isn't doesn't have any big underlying problems that we can easily fix at that point. So it's not quite just a question of adding the write-up, and it's not a simple process. It is something we are steadily working through, and slowly more and more are getting in. We have a lot of quests, which is an awesome thing, but obviously for this sort of thing, it just means it takes some time. The thing you can do that can help, there is a pinned thread on the forums called Project Quest. If you find a quest that is not in the system, please post it there. If you do want to give us a quick explanation of the quest that we might be able to use, that would be fabulous. Please remember that you're not allowed to give out solutions to quests on the forums when you're doing that. But if you want to, write us a description, yeah, that could be helpful. But the important thing is to put it on there so that we remember that quest exists and we can add it to our list of to-dos. We have several volunteers who have slowly and laboriously been working through all of them. There are so many, and it will go on their quest and then it will get tended to as soon as we can. So that is the small thing you can do. It's not, there we go, we've got a link to it, thanks Ms. Rye. That's unfortunately though the most you can do to help us with this particular thing, but it's still really useful. So that's me done on that one.
Okay. So next question is the Wonder Saddle and why it was made the way it was and why we released it so early. So the thing about the Wonder Saddle, it's obviously a promotional item, right? And the fact is as far as our priorities go, like our promotions are pretty low on the priority scale. So we don't want to spend a ton of time working on saddles and working on different promotion items to give out to you guys, because we'd rather be focusing on these big ticket items like the end game stuff and these new end zones that we just told you about. Those are our priorities. So we're not spending a lot of time on the Wonder Saddle, to come out. And when we were doing the Wonder Saddle, the big goal here was we wanted something that was nice, that it'd be a bonus to have, but it wasn't a must-have. Because if we made it a must-have, then the question we'd be getting now is, why are we contributing to the power creep, and why are we releasing things that are overpowered? So we just wanted something like, yeah, it's cool if you have it, but you don't necessarily need it. And as far as like the regen and that stuff goes, like I didn't once think that somebody was going to buy a Wonder Saddle because their empathing was twice as effective for mana. That wasn't anything that we were considering. It was padding just to make the thing better. Most of our Wonder items have padding. Like the Wonder Wad's got all the different damage types. The Wonder Wings have all the different insanity reductions for different spheres. They've all got some padding to them. So I said we wanted an item that was nice to have, but it wasn't a must-have. So it's something that people might enjoy, but not something that people needed. So, and I think that's okay. I mean, that's kind of what we would have done. Adding celerity when it was mounted. I mean, yeah, maybe it would have been better as a 10 crystal item, but there's already too much celerity in the game, so everybody's got celerity. Celerity off the wazoo. So I don't necessarily know that we need that, but anyway, that's why it was, and so it wasn't, we weren't trying to be lame or whatever. We wanted something that was nice but not amazing, and yeah.
We also we don't expect every wonder item or artifact in general to be universal. I mean, aside from the obvious thing that not everyone has a beast, though the vast majority of people do. It's not going to be as useful to everyone, and that's okay. And that's always going to happen with anything that we release. So yeah, that's the thing to bear in mind as well. So
yeah.
My next question is from Malagorn, and is about astrology and the stars in Lusternia. So how do the stars tie into astrology? How does everyone draw power from these constellations? We had a question, might have been from Eze, about what the constellations look like. Where do meteors come from? What is the habitable zone of Lusternia systems? These are all really interesting questions. And, maybe one day they'll get answered. One of the things with lore is that we have a lot of things set out and we have a lot of things that are open. Yeah, I'm not just completely trolling you by pretending to answer this question and then not answering this question. It's the question is a really good example of lore that we don't necessarily release. By not answering this now, one day we can give you a really awesome event that's all about the other planets or whatever. And I think one of the really cool things is that you can, like in terms of what the constellations look like, you've got their names. You want to do art of them, you decide. You can fundamentally it's stars in the shape of a skull or whatever it is. That's yeah, that's a good pun, Callie. Yeah, so it's and yes, meteors do come from dragons if you're unpleasant to them, or if you're too nice to them, as was poor Halifax's fatal flaw. Yeah, so that's one of the things I love about Lusternian lore is how open it is, how much there is to it, and how how much there is to explore even after this many years. So much has been explored and there's still so much that is there still to learn. So yeah, that's my sort of non-answer answer. So Orael, you had a question about squad XP gain and the tiers in that.
Yeah. I'm actually trying to look it up real quick so I don't tell you something wrong. I'm not finding it.
Do you want me to answer my next one and then you can answer afterwards?
No, I can answer. It's not super complicated. So basically, when we made the change, I don't know, it was a month or two back. It was, so the initial squads was that any 1 to 3 people just had the experience divided among the group, right? So if it was 3 people, it was divided by 3. Then anybody over 3 had the experience was just divided by 3 for the rest of it. So if you had 30 people, they were all getting 1/3 of the XP, which was increasing the amount of experience by huge amounts overall as a whole. So we changed it to be, after 10 people, it gets, it stops at 10 instead of 3. Which, the big complaint there was that, mid-sized groups kind of suffered more. Groups of 10 or whatever suffered more. But a big group was still going to benefit from it. So what we did is, instead of having it, per person, we did tiers of people. So if your group is anywhere from, I think, 3 to 6 people, it's now divided by 3. If it's 7 to 10, it's divided by 5. And if it's 10 to 14, it's divided by 7. And anybody 15 plus is the experience is divided by 10. So now it'll just be kind of tiered in that way. So mid groups will still benefit from getting more experience overall, but you won't have the same crazy top end XP gains for groups of 30 plus or whatever. So and get those tiers again from that. Yeah, so it's from what did I say? From 3 to 6, it's divided by 3. So if your group's 3 to 6 people, the experience you get from a mob order is divided by 3. If it's 7 to 10, it's divided by 5. If it's 11 to 14, it's divided by 7. And if it's 15 plus, it's divided by 10. And so the goal there was to make mid-sized groups just better overall, more worthwhile, encourage teamwork, that kind of stuff. So I think that answers that one.
Awesome. So I have a question about why we changed the rules on automation. So there are two main reasons that we did this, which is for clarity, for making the rule a bit clearer, and for enforceability. As you can imagine, it's quite difficult for us to decide if someone's, we've got to observe someone for a long time to work out if their system was just running indefinitely. It's relatively easy for us to work out if someone's AFK, but it's about judging how long someone's system can run for is a lot harder. And as you say, like it's not 100% clear. So the previous version of the rules was that as long as your triggers, and this is all kinds of automations, this is bashing, influencing, gem cutting, aether trading, anything, as long as at some point it cut off. So for example, if you've got something that lets you go around and influence an entire area, if your system cut off when you finished that area, it was fine. But if your system then ran you to the next area and had you do that one and then onto another area, indefinitely, under the previous rules, that wasn't permitted. That's hard to enforce. It's a bit hard to understand. So the new rules are you can automate those things as long as you remain at your computer at all times. As I say, it's quite easy for us to check if someone's AFK. If you've ever been AFK checked, an administrator will pop up and say, hello, are you here? And you'll say hi, and then everything will be fine. Nothing has changed in terms of the punishments for either. The punishment for automating any kind of, anything in this instance, will remain the same. Pretty much the rules are what people have been using for a long time. I think the thing with having a rule that isn't clear is that people do push it, understandably. It's to make it clear, to make it enforceable. The reason it's come up now is we actually had several queries about automation, all different kinds of automation, all come in within a couple of weeks, and so we looked over it, and that's why the rules have changed in this instance. Hopefully that answers that question. We have a question for both of us, which is whether we play other MUDs because we can't play characters in Lusternia, and if so, has being a builder and coder and then producer altered our perception when playing other games. So I have played other games in the past. I actually came to Lusternia originally having played Achaea. I also played Mechemia when it was out, and I played Aetolia. I've played quite a few different ones. I don't play them anymore, but it is really useful for spying on how other games work, and we do talk to the producers of the other games quite often to knowledge share. If a game does something really well, then we talk to them and ask their advice about things, and that's been really beneficial in all sorts of instances. So yes and no, I guess, is the answer to that question. And I think it's the same sort of thing for you, Orael, isn't it? Where you have done in the past, and
No, I've played other mods. I played Atolia, I played Imperium, played Achaea. I don't anymore. I don't have enough time to do it all.
Yeah, time is a valuable commodity.
Between work and life and whatnot. Yeah, I don't have enough time to really devote to playing other characters in other games and whatnot. But I have noticed that ever since stepping up into this kind of role, that I definitely look at even just like video games and stuff a lot differently. And I try to take inspiration and stuff for how certain things are handled, and I don't know, try to learn and see what I can bring to the table here. So it definitely has altered my perception and viewpoint when playing other games.
It's very hard to turn, once you've been any kind of game developer, it's very difficult to look at a game and turn your turn that brain off. I definitely do now look for what I can steal from other games. It's one way of putting it.
Yeah.
What I can take inspiration from, let's put it that way, that's a bit better. And it's definitely something that we do on all sorts of levels, be that from like a puzzle design to just roleplay influence and that sort of thing. So our last question is for you, Orael, which is, what can people brush up on if they're interested in becoming a mortal coder?
Oh yeah, Rapture I think it's C based, so C's good. Just your general programming knowledge, data structures and whatnot. The big things too is it's some of like the secondary stuff. Like I use Vim a whole lot to do all my coding stuff. So kind of brushing up on that kind of stuff would be good. Other than that, I don't know. Probably, to be honest, Ian would be better answering that question than me.
Yeah, I mean,
he's much more knowledgeable.
If people are interested in becoming a mortal coder, they can email us. Don't email me. There's no point. But you can email Orael, and if you've got queries about what it would entail, it could be a lot of work. So having, we completely respect people saying, can you give me an idea of what the expectations would be or things like that. And if you want a more involved answer, then we can consult Yana and give you any other advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that is all the questions we picked out. I'm aware we didn't get to everyone's questions from the threads. Some of them were duplicates, so you may have gotten a lot of things answered. We do have 10 minutes left. If anyone would like to, I can't promise we'll answer everything because some questions might require us to look things up. Whilst you're thinking of questions, yes, Omega, it would be orael@lusternia.com.
But spelled correctly.
Yeah, but spelled correctly. The one thing I will mention whilst you're thinking of questions, so we think these streams are a great way to get in contact with you, and we're potentially interested in doing more. Something that is relatively small that you can do to help support us in doing that is, if you haven't already, follow us here on Twitch. If we start doing this more, then becoming a Twitch affiliate has a certain number of requirements. One of those requirements is that we have 50 followers. Becoming a Twitch affiliate will mean that we can do certain things that we can't now. It will do things like mean that our streams, when they stay on here, last for longer. So definitely do give us a follow if you haven't already, because that will really help us out. It's a way you can help us get to streaming more. We can get custom emotes, if if you get us up to affiliate. So something to consider. Okay, so questions.
How much time does that was a good one. I like the time question about how much time does every org have in their stock rooms, and the answer is not enough.
Yeah, no one has enough time. Mizrai, you're our favourite shapeshifting Chaos Elder, obviously. Jonesy, we talked about the Alliance situation earlier on, so you can, once we finish streaming here, there will be a VOD immediately on Twitch. We're also recording, and we're hoping that if the recording comes out well, then we can put that up somewhere for you. I don't have details on when exactly that will be, but keep an eye on our social media, and we'll let you know as that appears. Okay, so Estara said she never released an area without some sort of lore. Has this changed with me now heading lore? Areas that exist without some secret plots. So, all areas will have some kind of lore. With Endzone, there will not be a quest in Endzone. So that is a slight change in terms of the concept we have, and I am so excited about the concept that we have that I wish I could talk to you about it now, but it will be better as a surprise. It has a really deep lore basis. The area is fundamentally steeped in lore. It is, whilst it is just a bashing area, it is not just a bashing area. It's something much cooler than that. But there will not be a quest there. There will not be NPCs that you go to talk to. There will just be things trying to kill you. So it is a sort of balance between the two, to answer that one.
As far as Aether trading in gold, I'm still looking at it. We're looking at it, but we made a couple of changes recently to it, so we're kind of, our big theme lately is incremental change. So we made some changes. We're gonna let it sit out and kind of see how it goes from here, and then we'll look at it again. So.
Yeah, hopefully, as Ixion says, the changes we've just made will address any gold issues as well. Piscin, that sounds like a really good thing to do with envoy reports, which will be opening after we release the next phase of the demigod changes, and once they're, any bug fixes done on that and everything settled, which we don't have an exact date on, but that sounds like the sort of thing that would be really good to put forward then. Warriors are on our star map.
Star map for sure.
Kaizin, we answered when Ascension is earlier. It's the seal challenges are in June. The trial of Ascension is in July. The dates will be released on the 1st of May. Combining brooches or bubblixes would be quite hard, I think, just based on how they work.
I suppose we could just put together an omnibix that goes, you just specify where you want to go.
Yeah.
But
benefiting from brooches without the stole effect.
Yeah, I looked into doing that, the like being able to choose your effect, and I know it's something that people really want. It's not exactly easy though. There's a lot of stoles and a lot of stuff and a lot of different things to do about it, so we can keep looking at it, but it's not a high priority.
Potentially, again, something you could put as an envoy report, depending on the scope of it. We can then look at it. The difference in Ascension is just that it is occurring in summer. The events themselves, we're not doing things like with the Garni Ascension where the format will be different. The difference is that Ascension is occurring in June.
Instead of February.
Yeah.
I think there were mixed reviews on the last time we changed to Ascension, so if we do it, we want to do it. We want to put more time and thought into it. So. And
yes, the order of the events is slightly different. When we release the dates on the 1st of May, you'll see that. But basically, the way they paired up before, we often got two events that required a lot of preparation on our end, all on the same weekend. So just to make it easier on us so we can make those events better, we've now got one event that's a slightly lighter load with one that's a heavier load. That sort of thing. Anyone else got any last minute questions?
I think the Master Crown works because I think it's a separate item, so we'd have to create something.
Yeah.
to accept the different fixes and whatnot. So, if that makes sense.
We are actually looking for artifact ideas right now. We do know that the Lyra Bubblix is one that you want. So do throw, if you've got any artifact ideas, do throw them up on the thread on the forums. We are specifically looking at them in the next few weeks, so that would be great.
Yeah, you can submit the idea again. That's fine. That works.
So balance times on trade things is what I suggested you. It wasn't Shadows, it was Persin, and that was what I suggested you put envoy reports in for. The one, Orael, would you rather they put that in as a single report for all trades, or to be specific to, for example, gem cutting?
It's probably better to be specific.
Yeah.
We want to really stay away from people using one report to try to get 15 different changes in. So we want to be really specific what we're doing. So
ways to tend to astral node health. So we're hoping that Endzone will give you some more options in terms of where to go for PvE, and we're hoping that will improve things, so that you'll have more options, so that it won't be that everyone is in that one place. So we'll see how it goes then. Mizrahi, you can't say Shikari doesn't count and then pick Shikari anyway.
More bug streams, huh? We can do more bug streams. We've done 2 of them, and I don't know. I figured.
Yeah,
we do another one.
We wanted to do some different formats of stream as well. I am planning, and I don't have a date for this. I am planning to do an NPC creation stream at some point where you will get to pick different things about an NPC that will then actually go in the game. This could be absolute chaos, so we'll see how this goes. But you'll get to pick the race and things like that. So we'll see. And no promises about when that will be or where that NPC will end up. But that is something I've got planned for the future.
So artifact will have new areas. Like what areas do we need to add to it? That might be a bug. Where does the balloon go now? I forget. Does it just go to Icewind?
Gosh, I don't even know what that is. Okay, it goes to continents.
Icewind. Sure.
Well, are there any continents that it doesn't currently go to? Or does it go to all of the currently existing continents? Because it's quite rare that we add a new continent.
Yeah.
So it may be that actually if it goes to continent specifically, then it already goes to everywhere. Okay.
All of them now besides UV. We'll have to look into it.
Yeah.
If it was all open continents, where else would you want it to go?
We do not have any new races currently in the works. We've got tons of races. They're all pretty cool. Okay. Well, thank you all so much, everyone, for coming. We have hit the end of our time. It's been amazing to have so many of you here. We've actually almost hit 50 people at points, so that's really awesome. We will have the VOD, for those of you who joined late, the VOD will be up pretty much immediately as soon as we end the stream here on Twitch. But as I say, we're also going to try and put the recording we've got up somewhere else for you. And we'll let you know. I'll have the Twitter gremlins let you know about that when it appears. Thank you all for your questions, and I hope you are all taking care of yourselves and staying home if you're able to. If you are an essential worker, thank you very much for everything you're doing, and we're glad that we can provide somewhere for you to be, where you can get some rest and have some fun and spend some time with our awesome community. So thank you all very much, and it's goodbye from me.
Yep. We'll see you guys later. Thanks again for everything. And yeah, we're good.
Thanks.